I have an interesting question for you. Not that I haven't had interesting questions for you before, but I have another interesting question. How many of you out there believe that man ever went to the moon and landed on the moon, walked on the moon, floated on the moon? I don't believe that man ever went to the moon and walked on the moon. I believe it was all propaganda. I know the story when John F. Kennedy in the 60s uh, saying that that's something he wanted to see accomplished. Man, take a trip to the moon. I will say this because I'm an average man, human being, and because I've been in the military. I do believe that we have rockets, rocket propelled aircraft, and even satellites in space that have went into space. I do most definitely believe that. I think you'd be foolish not to believe that because you've seen rockets take off, and you've seen jets. I've seen jets being in the military. I've been on planes before, and I know that we have satellites in space, in orbit, for various reasons, spying on other countries and back and forth, and for cell phone purposes and a plethora of other things. I believe that we have even sent rockets far distances into space, but I don't ever believe that a man ever traveled on a rocket to space and landed on a planet, got out of the spacecraft, and physically was on the planet. I don't believe that ever happened. I just don't. Now, just something for you to think about. And I'm not a scientist, and I'm not a aerospace expert, and so forth. I just want to throw this at you, something for you to think about. Uh, the longest plane that's ever traveled, according to record, was from the JFKD airport in New York to Singapore, and that was an 18-hour long trip, and the distance was clocked at 9,537 miles. 9,537 miles in a plane non-stop leaving New York going to Singapore, which is in Asia. 18 hours. I believe that happened. But me, to take an aircraft that's on a platform, a rocket that ignites or blasts off and goes through space, and that distance is 238,000 miles from Earth to the moon. So we have 9,537 miles that's already recorded of a plane leaving from one point here in the west, going to Singapore in the east, 18 hours. So 9,537 miles versus 238,000 miles from Earth to orbit, landing on a planet. I don't buy that. I don't buy that it ever happened. Now, I was not a fly on the wall, so to speak. I wasn't in the board meeting, and I was too young to even know. But I don't believe that human beings could be on the planet as I'm speaking now. I'm not saying that it could never happen in the future. Maybe in the distant future. I don't believe that human beings could ever fly in a manned vessel from Earth to way outer space, 230 something thousand miles, and then return. I don't believe that ever happened. You know, there are conspiracy theories. There are people who have said that there were reflections on the face shield of the astronauts where they could see a sign that said Hollywood, for example. Or since there's no gravity on the moon, they say they saw the flag that they were supposedly, allegedly planting there was moving forward like this, as if there was a wind blowing it. And that it was really, in fact, a Hollywood set. I'm sure you probably have heard that. But there's a gentleman who is a videographer, photographer, a movie person, said that he had been researching this theory that men have traveled to the moon and landed on the moon, and he's been doing this for 20 to 30 years. He said it is highly impossible for them to have achieved what they said they achieved. They never landed. So I'm going to leave that link at the bottom here. So can you imagine? I'm asking you that's watching me. It's just a general question, and it's an honest question. Can you imagine, without you being an astronaut, can you imagine yourself sitting on a plane or a rocket, as it were, strapped down, taking off, traveling 238,000 miles in space? How long it would take? It took 18 hours for the plane that left JFKD in New York to go to Singapore. It took 18 hours to get there, straight shot. And that was over 9,000 miles, almost 10,000 miles. But we're talking 238,000 miles. How long would that take? How sophisticated would the equipment have to be to get you there and to get you back? I don't believe it ever happened. Just let me know what you think. I'm not up for debate. I'm just telling you what I think. Man does not have that capability yet. He can send spaceships. He can send other aerodynamic equipment up in space. He can do that. But he's not going that far. He's not going to do it. So what about all of the so-called evidence that they say they have from people going there? And what about the spaceship that took off many years ago and killed some astronauts? I believe that happened. That did indeed happen, I believe. The one spaceship that blew up and killed several astronauts. But to me, that's evidentiary. That's enough to show and or prove. I don't care what you say the reason was for the explosion. If it didn't make it that far into space, how in the world is it going to make 238,000 miles into space? And it didn't get very far out of this atmosphere at all before it blew up. The one that killed those astronauts. God rest their souls. So let me know what you think. And watch the link that I'm leaving below as well. That was it. That was all.